There was no gaps in your architecture from what I could see. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's reassuring. You don't want them all, you know? And it's like you
Yeah.
got to pick your, even with my current clients, there are some things where I push for something and I know they're not going to go for it.
Mhm.
But my job is to push for what I believe to be correct and what I believe is in the
Yeah.
best interest of the client. If they decide to do something else, it's their money, it's their org, it's
Right.
their business. But knowing when to die on the hill and knowing when to say, I'm going to save my ammo for another battle.
Mhm.
That is a difficult skill and painful skill to develop. But once you have it, it will serve you the rest of your life,
Awesome.
That's where I guess that's wisdom, not like I'm some wise guy or something like that. But I tell people like knowledge is knowing something, but wisdom is knowing better. And
Ooh, I like that.
you like that? Someone always asked me to define the difference between knowledge and wisdom, and that's what I came up with. Knowledge is knowing something, wisdom is knowing better. Because
Mm.
you don't know that a lot of times until you experience the pain. You go, oof, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
So speaking of pain, I am working on my first proof of concept for revenue lifecycle management. I'm actually building stuff. So I have a client who is considering Revenue Cloud broadly, but they're not sure which product to buy. For their direct sales motions, CPQ or RLM will work. To date, and this is from Salesforce, there are no plans to end of sale CPQ or billing. There's no plans to end of life CPQ or billing. Subscription management will go away. Those customers on subscription management will convert to RLM,
No
revenue
way.
lifecycle management, but there are no plans to end of life or even so far end of sales CPQ and billing. They're still actively selling the CPQ and billing, which is interesting for other reasons I won't get into here. I'll just get angry and annoyed. But with that said, the customer is going, well, which one is the best fit for us? It's going to be RLM. We all kind of knew it was going to be RLM, both Salesforce, myself, the client kind of had a sense it was going to be RLM, but we still started the POC with CPQ. And the reason was because the first chunk, we only had 40 hours to work with. We did a small deal at first, 40 hours, see what we can do in 40 hours. Well, the first 10 of those were burned just trying to get me logged into their IT systems. Such a pain, like virtual machine, and my email wasn't working. And then you get all this stuff. So once I was finally logged in, we were flying because I can build super fast. I mean, well, I guess I was talking you guys through Juanis, but if you've seen me build in CPQ, I fly. Revenue lifecycle management is new. So there's a lot of stuff I'm still learning. But I'm starting to piece it together a little here and a little there. And in a future, either an office hours episode, I might actually do it separate from actual office hours as more of a training, but I want to do two videos. One video, I want to do a comparison of CPQ and billing and revenue lifecycle management, talk about the differences, talk about the roadmaps of both, talk about the trade-offs and the common use cases for both and where CPQ and billing starts to hit limits like self-service capabilities. You really don't do that in CPQ, right? But if you have only direct and partner selling motions, that's fine. Great. CPQ will still work for you. Billing can still work. But if you have any cases of e-commerce, if you have other types of API needs where this partner of mine wants to push an order into my system because I work with them and they just do direct things, but they don't have access to a portal of mine, and we need APIs to do that, then RLM becomes the big fit, the best fit, not big fit, the best fit. So I want to do a video comparing the products and kind of giving a history as well. We started with CPQ and then we had billing 1.0 and then they scrapped that, started again for billing 2.0. I don't know if you knew that detail, Kevin, that originally billing was an acquisition And once it was acquired and they got under the hood, they went, well, this is total dog shit. They scrapped it. And then they came out with a second billing product. There's still same branding and everything. But if a customer had purchased that first one, then they had to re-implement because it wasn't the same product. And then subscription management came out, but it almost felt like to me, it kind of feels like a false start towards RLM. It was almost like subscription management was supposed to fill some gaps left by CPQ, but then this RLM thing came on and you had the velocity acquisition. So there's a whole bunch of swirling dust at Salesforce, and you'd have deals where account executives were trying to sell industry CPQ and Salesforce CPQ at the same time. So you're cannibalizing your own sales. But now it's starting to homogenize, at least on paper and in the architecture, of a comprehensive end-to-end solution, which is really still kind of Frankensteined together. But I want to really do a deep dive of that, going through the different pages in the public facing pages in the community to show kind of that story. Here's where we started. Here's where we are today. Here's where my opinion, based on what I see the pattern being of where I think it's going to go. And then the second video that I want to make is, okay, now you're curious about RLM. You want to tinker around in a sandbox. How can you actually do that? And then create a sandbox for RLM. And then the next iteration, just like I did the peanut butter and jelly in CPQ, I want to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in RLM and continue the tradition of using peanut butter and jelly sandwich to explain really difficult and complex concepts to the average person. So there's that. I think those videos will do well over time, and I'll probably just record those, I don't know, on my own time. And then I want to start to pivot some of this office hour stuff more and more toward RLM, because that is the direction things are going. Now that I'm starting to get hands-on keys with RLM, I see where they want to go with the product. I think that's a good direction. There are some fundamental shifts in how things are constructed, because if you have the opportunity to create a product again, then you're going to take the lessons you learned in the first iteration. You're going to say, oh, that was kind of what it needed to be, but we need to rethink how we do that. MDQ is a really good example here. Multidimensional quoting in CPQ is kind of a half-baked thing. There's a laundry list of over 100 known issues with multidimensional quoting as just one piece. We know they're not going to fix it, at least not currently. There are no plans, and this is also confirmed publicly by Salesforce, that there are no plans for continued development of CPQ and billing. What it is what it is, aside from bug fixes. Now, to me, I'm thinking, well, there are some pretty big freaking bugs especially with MDQ. Oh, it's working as designed. No. You need to fix that design, because this is a showstopper. Like amendments and MDQ and orders just don't really like each other very much. So we should fix that, because that's, in my opinion, a bug. That's like the end of the 1940s sci-fi film where the bug is as big as the city kind of a bug. But that's just my opinion. And I doubt any product managers at Salesforce have enough context and background to actually fix it anyway, because the acquisition happened back in 2015. So there's that. But I think the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, making more videos, more training content around this, more resources, because while there is already surprisingly, there's a lot of documentation already for RLM, more than I thought there would be. And that's good. There's always going to be a need for more documentation and more training, especially since this product is it's so different. I'm inclined at present to say it's more difficult and complex to implement than CPQ, but it could also just be my lack of familiarity with the product. I don't know which is true yet. It might be somewhere in the middle, but right now I can't help but look at it and go, if we thought CPQ and billing created red accounts, RLM has a potential to create even more. And that's not because the product is broken, but just like with CPQ, a lot of the reasons we have so many red accounts and dumpster fire projects with CPQ is because of all the stuff you can do with it. It's such a difficult and complex business process in general. And then you layer on this complicated technology that very few people know how to implement and implement well. And then you just, then the partners see the dollar signs for the implementation costs and just like, oh yeah, we need to do Revenue Cloud because look at all the money. Yeah, but you have no idea what you're doing. There's a lot of money in gold mining as well, but if I tried to start a gold mining company right now, I would go out of business very quickly because I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I'm going to steal that metaphor and use it.
You know what's kind of interesting was that when I was at Salesforce and primarily just focused on Salesforce CPQ, I remember feeling like I was in a bubble in the sense that, that was the only CPQ solution I knew.
Me
I
too.
wouldn't know what was out there in the market. So, focusing on a new CPQ solution makes it's so interesting how our quote unquote volatile the CPQ market is. And what I mean by that is that I feel like Salesforce CPQ had a lot of limitations, or at least like it was a product that you had to have a lot of workarounds. And I think
Yes.
it allowed so many other business opportunities, a lot of companies to, start and prosper because of the limitations that Salesforce CPQ had.
Logic created by the same people who created Salesforce CPQ. Prodly created by the same people who created CPQ. 3Kit created by the same people who created CPQ. So like it's almost you almost start to wonder, were these gaps intentionally left so that I could start another company and sell it to Salesforce for a whole boatload of money? Or I don't know. But yeah.
Truthfully, I think a lot of customers prefer to have their CPQ solution come from Salesforce, in the sense that, if I have Salesforce CRM, I want to have a solution that comes from that same CRM because I want to attach to each other. So, I'm very fortunate that I didn't just trust that, hey, I'm just going to stick with this one solution and just kind of hope for the best. Because again, like this one innovation, I think is going to change like the whole CPQ market and everything. It's very scary, It must be nice to specialize in CRM because for the most part, there's not from my perspective, there's not strong competitors for the CRM Salesforce.
Your next biggest is Dynamics.
Yeah,
but there are thousands of CRMs out there for small businesses or solo people or whatever. And I mean, a lot of people are still using an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I will say, like, the narrower and the more difficult and complicated the thing is that you get really good at, the more money you make doing it. Because if I say, hey, I'm an expert in Sales Cloud, most people go, okay, snooze fest. So is everyone else. But if I say that I'm an expert in CPQ, okay, that's a much smaller pool of potential customers. I think there's somewhere around 7,000 Revenue Cloud customers who are on CPQ and or billing. And that's really good. That's 7,000 potential clients, especially knowing how poorly CPQ is implemented across so many customers. All I have to do is figure out who those companies are. And then I go, hey, are you having issues with this product? Oh, you are? Oh, look at that. I can help you fix that. And then I could probably continue for the next 5 to 10 years, just doing search and rescue CPQ projects. But there's a big part of me that wants to be part of the next generation, the next iteration, the next evolution of this product suite, where I'm not only helping implement early projects and doing it well, but I'm also creating training content to try to help prevent the disasters that we created in the first place. Because especially early on, there was so little documentation for CPQ. It was all in the Steelbrick community, and it was Gilles answering questions for everybody. And then when Steelbrick was acquired by Salesforce, they shut down that community, and then there was no documentation. And you're like, what? There's no conversation. All that rich commenting and stuff in that forum was lost, unless, some people may or may not have used Evernote to clip the living hell out of that community once they found out that it was shut down, and then they have all that knowledge locked away in Evernote somewhere. Not going to name names, but some people might have done that. so I want to be part of the solution for the next training piece, because Trailhead creating content is great, but it takes a long time to get it out. There are so many layers of approvals and editing that it has to go through. Setting it up on Trailhead is difficult. So I could probably produce revenue lifecycle management training content way faster than Salesforce can, because the metaphor I used earlier with my client was, Salesforce is an oil tanker. I'm on a surfboard. It takes them hours to turn around, but I can turn around in about 30 seconds. So if a new topic, somebody asks a question about RLM and I can answer it, cool. I can publish that content the same day if needed. The community is a really good example of that, where you have people answering questions constantly throughout the day. And that's really cool. But training is going to be key to RLM being seen in the industry as a successful product. The worst thing that can happen to it is for the first 50 to 100 projects to just go completely sideways and crash and burn and be dumpster fires, because then the product is going to get blamed for being insufficient, rather than what is probably more likely, which is clients and Salesforce customers over customizing, overbuilding, over complicating their business processes. I see RLM as a tremendous opportunity for companies to think very seriously about their product to cash process and be very intentional, starting first with the strategy of it all. Like, we have a window here to rethink how we commercialize our products and how we bring things to market and how we price and how we structure things. So let's be very deliberate about that from the start to avoid a lot of these hiccups that we had the last time. Will they do that? I don't know, because there still seems to be this idea in the world of tech of we just need to build stuff as fast as humanly possible and hope for the best. I see that strategy fall apart over and over again. We all have CrowdStrike, for example. But perhaps that mindset is starting to change, where people go, maybe we don't move fast and break things as much. Maybe we move a little bit slower and break fewer things, or move at a reasonable pace and break nothing. That would be nice, which is the pace that I like to work at. I like to move steadily, but break nothing. Moving fast, I don't care. If I'm crashing into a tree every half mile because I'm going so fast, it's still going to take me just as long to get there. And I'm going to be stressed and I'm going to be broken the whole time. Whereas if I just drive reasonably, I'll be to Chicago from my place in 2 hours instead of an hour and a half. But there's much higher risk of fatal car accident if I try to shave 30 minutes off, Anyway.
So one question, I only have like 2 minutes. I have to take another
Sure.
phone call. But from your research of RLM, does it look easy? The thing about Salesforce CPQ is that, I think I can make the administration look easy, even though it's not easy, right? But I think I can convince someone that it's
Yeah.
actually easy, right? Did you get that impression when you were looking at RLM, like, oh, like I would think this is kind of easy if I didn't know better?
Kind of. I'll say that the initial setup, like the deep system setup of RLM, is far more involved than CPQ. In that, to get CPQ in my org, I go to the link, I install. It takes 20 minutes. It installs it. I go to the package. I change some settings. I assign some licenses to you and me, and I can start building, right? With RLM, there's a lot that must be enabled just to start configuring. Way more stuff than I thought. And at my last count, there were over 40 permission sets related to different pieces of RLM functionality that need to be considered and assigned to people. There are multiple permission set licenses that must be considered and assigned to people, because whoever manages your product catalog might not be the person who's allowed to do pricing management, might not be the person who's allowed to do order management. So there are many more permission set licenses, permission sets that must be considered. There are many more system settings that must be turned on to use it. So it's a longer process to set it up. That said, I will say that building out a bundle in RLM is more intuitive. In that it is almost like a WYSIWYG UI based configuration. If you imagine, let's say that you took Flow Builder, but you applied it to creating products and bundles, it is much more like that. It's a prettier UI. You can visually see products, features, options, though they're not called those things in RLM, they have different names, but it's the same type of idea. And I'm trying to, in my head, conceptually, I'm trying to map, okay, this thing in CPQ, what is that in RLM? Okay, great. What is this thing in CPQ in RLM? And creating almost understanding how the two data models relate to each other to help me understand and learn the tool. I'll have more perspective on that as I go, but once the initial system configuration is done, creating a bundle, I would say, is easier. I don't know yet about pricing. I don't know yet about these other things. I haven't gotten that far in my POC yet. This is the first time I'm actually building anything in RLM. But aside from the training, but it's so far, I would say it's easier to, more intuitive for a new person, I would say. For me, I can still fly and just boop, 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 boop. I'll create a bundle in CPQ, no problem. RLM is taking a little longer because I just don't know it yet. So I'm learning as I go.
Okay. I appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah, we'll see you. And then there were two Juanas.
Yeah, just shoot me.
All right.
But the information you were giving about RLM, I'm glad that you're getting your hands on it finally, and your initial outlooks of how it's going. You mentioned before that you don't think it's parity wise it's equal to CPQ yet.
It
But
is far closer than I thought it would be at this point in time.
wow.
I will say that, as cynical and skeptical as you know me to be, I am almost impressed with how close some elements are to what we already have. Now, billing is still a ways away, and there are other functions that I really need to see. But as far as if we just take products and configuration, and the experience of creating a bundle, far further ahead than I thought it would be. Another client implemented Salesforce contracts, so I had an ability to see Salesforce contracts in a real org, and it is live in production for that client of mine. It is not to the level of DocuSign or Conga yet, but Salesforce is serious about its investment. They're putting a lot of resources into RLM, which gives me some optimism, especially because I'm now hands-on keys. I'm seeing it. So I'm going, okay, it's not just vaporware. It's not just slideware now or marketecture. I'm actually in there. I'm seeing it with my own hands, putting hands on keyboard. So this, I'll have a much more informed opinion about it after the next couple of months. But Salesforce is winning. They're winning some ground at the present moment, despite my cynicism.
And another thing you mentioned is that to get to the configuration part, there are a lot more. I forgot what you said.
Setup steps, like your system settings. Yeah. Enabling orders, enabling pricing management, enabling product catalog management. There's just more stuff. I don't know that it's more difficult. There are more steps. And those steps are new to me. And they're not, the specific sequence of things you have to turn on is not well documented yet. But that's where I see myself coming in with, all right, I'm just going to do this shit myself, since I know I can produce documentation faster than a big corporation can produce documentation. One of the beauties of working for myself now is I can do the work that I know needs to be done for the industry and not just whatever my boss at whatever consultancy tells me I'm going to work on. Because in previous consulting roles, there was the idea that I'm going to do this more training, enablement, whatever, since that's one of my special skills, I think, is teaching. But I would always get stuck on the projects and told, nope, you're going to bill on this project and you're just going to be here forever. And it would consume all of my time. So I never got to do the big things that I had in my head. But now I can just say, well, I'm going to take on less project work because I'm going to build this thing that I know is going to have massive ripple effects throughout the industry. Kind of like the CPQ study guide that I created years ago, which remains the single most downloaded piece of content in Simplis's history, from what I understand, from sources familiar with the matter. So I'm pretty proud of that. It's helped a lot of people study for the exam. So doing things like that, things that need to get done, but you can't bill an hour for it, so no consultancy wants to do it. And you can't sell licenses with it, so Salesforce doesn't want to do it. So, oh, fuck it, I'll just do it myself. Which paradoxically is going to bring me, or counterintuitively, is going to bring me consulting work, because then people will go, oh, here's somebody who actually knows what the fuck they're talking about. Let me work with this person.
Visually, from a visual standpoint, CPQ always seemed very antiquated and non-Salesforce-like. Does RLM improve on the UI aspects?
Yes, and CPQ used to look worse. In the early days, it used to look worse, but at the time when it got upgraded, people thought, oh, this looks nice. But then that quickly became antiquated. RLM it definitely has a better look to it. Here's what I'll do. Since this is, I think I have it pulled up here. What do you think, Juanis?
Wow, that looks amazing. It's so intuitive and it's so similar to CPQ and the language that it uses that if you know CPQ, the transition is not difficult. Obviously, things are in a different place than they used to be, but the terminology is very similar. So if you know your CPQ, you can at least get around.
Yes. I think the semantics is probably one of the biggest hurdles. If you're an existing CPQ person, the framework is the same kind of a thing. You sell products together, okay? In one system, they're called options. In one system, product options. In the new system, they're called product components. In one system, they're called product features. In another system, they're called product categorizations, or whatever the hell it was. They're called, what is that thing called? They're called product groups. Oh,
Yeah.
innovation. It feels like in the military, when they rebrand like a division, it's no longer the 7th division, it's now the 20th division, and it's the best division ever created. Okay, some officer needed a bullet for their evaluation report, so they renamed it, and it's the same organization as it was yesterday. It's just a different. So the bundling structure maps fairly directly, but I'm very early in RLM process, and there's a lot more tangential stuff that gives us more capabilities, but I have no idea what it is yet. So it'll be a continuous mapping exercise. And one of the things I want to create is like some documentation on my website of like, here's what it is in CPQ, and here's what it is in RLM, and here's what this is in CPQ, and here's what this. So to help me, but also help others at the same time, because I need a reference for this type of a thing. What the hell is this called in RLM? To help all of us, old timers in CPQ make the jump. If you're new, it doesn't really matter, because you're only going to notice product components and product groups and whatever. So, okay, fine. If you're net new learning RLM, that's great. But if you're a CPQ person, like Steelbrick person like me, how can we better facilitate? First, the mind has to change, because there's we gotta, what if we want to migrate from CPQ to RLM? Well, first you got to understand what both products can and cannot do. And then you have to understand how the semantics are, the data models are different, or the processes are different, etc. So then as I'm learning, I'm basically going to document my own knowledge journey,
And the visual refresh was nice also. It makes it
Yeah.
much easier to get around.
And I'm a visual person, so being able to see the structure of the bundle is very useful. And I think especially for a new person, if you're brand new to the idea of CPQ, being able to see the bundle structure like that rather than a series of related lists on the product, it's the same thing underneath. You're creating records in different objects through the system, but and many of the functions are the same. How many of these options at a minimum must I select? How many at a maximum can I select? What is my starting quantity of a product option, or in RLM, a product component? These sorts of things start to map. It's the same thing that we're solving in many cases. Companies are still selling complex configurations of products to other companies. We still need to define business rules around how these products can be sold. We still need to calculate pricing. We still need to calculate discounts. We still need to generate subscriptions and renew those subscriptions and amend those subscriptions. Many of the use cases are the same, but the tooling is different, which is why I emphasize over and over again, focusing on the principles of what we're doing rather than the specific tactical pieces. What happens? Well, we got a deal. We got to send some sort of a document to the customer to say, this is what we want to sell you. How does the data get on that document? How do we get that signature from the client? How do we make sure that everything that we sold is valid and approved? And then how do we track what they purchased? I did not once said anything about Salesforce or Salesforce specific products. It's all the same stuff, whether it's Oracle CPQ, Salesforce CPQ, RLM. It's the same basic pieces. It's the same basic problems that we're solving regardless of the solution. But RLM looks to be, especially if you're a consultant, if you are an administrator, if you are an architect, from what I have seen in CPQ, if the same pattern repeats with RLM, RLM will be a cash cow and a career builder for many years to come. And that's all I have to say about that for now.
Yeah, Forrest Gump should have specialized in CPQ instead of investing in Apple stock, I'm sure.
And I bet he would know what's in that box of chocolates because he configured it. This turned out to be a pretty good office hours section. And next time I want to spin up, I want to talk about the differences between all the products in the history. That's one video. And the other video, like I said, is going to be creating a sandbox for yourself so you can actually start to try it. I'll probably show creating one from a playground in Trailhead and then creating one from scratch if I can figure out how to do that. What I don't know yet is if I just spin up a dev org, can I enable RLM, or is that something that only Salesforce can push RLM licenses to an org? I have no idea how that works yet. I imagine at some point, because I saw that subscription management is already available in free dev orgs. I wonder if the same will become true of RLM. It's to be seen. But all this documentation that needs to get created, if I don't see it created, I'm just going to start creating it for myself. And then that'll bring traffic to my website, which will bring leads, which will bring business. And other consultancies are welcome to try to do the same thing. They won't, though, because they're too busy trying to grow and scale as fast as a software company, which is just going to burn out their employees and make them look for a new job, which is going to promise them work-life balance or work-life integration and unlimited PTO. And then they're going to realize after 3 months that No, it's the same shit at a different company, and then they're gonna get disgruntled and do it all over again. I get the sense that the world of work, knowledge work in particular right now, is very much like the last 15 minutes of a bug's life, when the bugs realize that they can live richer, fuller lives without the grasshoppers. I've been saying that shit for years. It's a big metaphor
That's a good one. I haven't heard that one.
and a funny movie.